so with Cavago, Cavago really is a platform for the horse world, by the horse world. And perhaps one of the brightest lights in the world is Yeguada de la Cartuja. For me, it's a place that I've dreamed of going since I was a little boy. I kind of pinched myself. And when I met Patricia at CCAB last year, like, we became the best of friends. And to just talk about these magnificent horses in their magnificent home is just such a pleasure. And we're really fortunate, extremely fortunate, to actually have Mariano here, who not only is a veterinarian, but he's, to me, he's like a living encyclopedia, right? Because there's not too many people who have that level of knowledge and know-how on the breed that people have associated with being iconic. Just this morning, I was shown a couple of PREs, and they said, "What do you think about them?" And I was like, I don't know, but I do know someone who knows a lot about them, and I'm speaking to them later today. So with that, I'm extremely excited to talk to you about it. For the audience, the exciting thing is that we're not only going to talk about the history and the culture associated with these magnificent Andalusian horses, but also their breeding and what do they look for. And then we'll talk a little bit about what the future is. So with that, I thought before we kick things off, we do quick introductions. So Mariano, why don't you start and tell us about yourself, and then we'll move on to Patricia, and we'll take it from there.
I think it's better that Patricia start with the history, I think.
Okay.
And what we are doing in the stud, and why we are as state stud. And by sure, after the history and explaining 500 years, lots of questions will appear.
Absolutely. So Patricia is just coming back onto the session. This might be an internet thing, but she should be back almost there. So we'll hold fire until she comes back online. There she is. She's back. So Patricia,
yeah.
With that, obviously you look after the marketing and the PR of these wonderful horses. The story of them must be told. The whole world should know about them. So with that, I pass the baton to you. Take us on a journey. Tell us about this wonderful place in horses.
Well, first of all, I have to say that Yeguada de la Cartuja is currently owned by a public company. We belong to Expasa, Agricultura y Ganadería. It's 100% government owned. And mainly because of, historical reasons. While I'm talking, I'm going to run through a short video with pictures and historical pictures of the horses. And not of the horses, of our horses placed in historical places of the city to get pretty much located where we are. Do you mind?
Please go for it. Please share your screen. I'm really excited to see these images and videos.
Here we go. Toda pantalla, ventana, aplicación, compartir. Well, I don't know if it works. Well, I can make it work. Here we go. Compartir. Like the window, isn't it?
Yeah, you need to press share your screen.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah, we can see your screen.
Start the video.
Can you see it now?
No.
We can see your screen, but
you must start the video, Patricia.
It's on.
No.
Is it on now?
We can't see the video yet, but we should be able to see it soon.
Here we go. And then
this should be able to work.
Otherwise, if it doesn't work, don't worry, I can talk.
We'll give it one more go. Because these images are spectacular, right?
Okay, don't worry. Here we go. Nope, I can make it work. It worked in the office, but it didn't work here.
We tested this out earlier.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. I can talk, and that's it.
You brought
there's like a little screen underneath.
Can you see the Chrome tab if you try that?
Here we go. No, it doesn't work. Don't worry.
Okay.
No big deal.
So what we'll do for the audience is later on we'll do a series of pictures.
I'll send it to you.
Our
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
You can post it in the webpage if you want to. Well, again, it's 100% government owned. And why does the government own a horse farm? Because I mean, like, if you think about it, does not make much sense. Well, as I said before, it's mainly because of historical reasons. We have first written records since 1484. So you can imagine, it was worth keeping this up. Well, I have to go back in history because, the image of the PRE, or the name as a PRE, Pura Raza Español, was given already in the 20th century. But the image taken was the Iberian horse. And then we have had horses since the prehistorical times. I mean, most of the prehistorical paintings, especially in southern Spain, the most represented animal was the horse, which indicates us that the horse has been present in our life forever. So what happens is that we're talking now 1400s. Well, the city of Jerez was, Spain was invaded by the Arabs and they stayed there for like 800 years. And the city of Jerez, because we are located in southern Spain, in the city of Jerez de la Frontera, was reconquered from the Arabs in the year 1264. And then it was very normal for the people back in those days that the king would give nobility title, land, and money to this nobleman that would go to conquest the cities. And it happened the same in Jerez. 24 noblemen were named the rulers of the city. And now we make a big jump in history, and a direct descendant of one of these 24 noblemen from mother's side and father's side was Álvaro Obertos de Valeto. This guy, as you can imagine, he was immensely rich. I mean, awfully rich. So before he died, he was single. He was never married. And before he died, he decided to donate everything, all his fortune, to a Catholic praying order. And he chose the Carthusian order, or La Cartuja, which originally is settled, they come from, it's a French congregation. It's, in fact, is the oldest silent congregation still now in existence, Catholic, of course. And they had already 2 monasteries in Spain, one in Sevilla and one in Granada. But this guy had so much money, he said, okay, he bought a huge piece of land and started building the monastery. And the monks came in the monastery in 1476. Well, now we cannot think about horse breeding the same way we think right now. We have to get into a context. Back in those days, these religious orders with monasteries, churches, cathedrals, they were not only places to pray, they were also centers of economy. I mean, there was so much going on around those monasteries or churches or cathedrals. I mean, if you've read or seen the movie or read the book Pillars of Earth from Ken Follett, you can make a good idea of how I used to work. So it happened the same in the monastery here outside in the outskirts of Jerez. They ended up owning a lot of land, more than 5,000 hectares. And of course, as time goes by, they started having lots of different income sources or economy sources. Considering the economy back in those days, of course, agriculture, they had their own fishing port. They have also hostels in towns, wine cellars, a little bit of everything so they could make economy. And they had, of course, a lot of workers working for them. They were the biggest employers in the area. And of course, one of these economy lines chosen was the horse. And why the horse? Think about it. Back in those days, we're talking late 1400s, beginning of the 1500s. The horse was considered a weapon, transportation. It was used as a transportation tool, and it was also used to work on the fields, to do agriculture. So people would not take a lot of care about this breeding. They just needed a horse to make a task. So no big deal about the breeding. They just needed a strong horse, But then the Carthusian monks, through donations, they got quite nice horses. And even though the first written records of the first mares coming into the monastery was exactly 1484, because they came from Sevilla, from the other monastery. I mean, the real breeding and selecting of the horse started at the beginning of the 1700s. It's when they started taking really care of the breeding, considering the fates and fashions of the time, because the main customers were the rich people, nobility, warriors, And already in the 1700s, all these about dressage, arts, especially in the beginning, was so much, it was so trendy. To make it simple, to make it easy to understand, they started selecting.
Wow.
Here we go. Hold on. Finally.
Look at that horse. So is it because the monks were one of the few who could read and write? Is that why they were able to start breeding so selectively?
Yes, of course. And they could read and write. They had a lot of workers working for them. They even had their own vets. Funny enough, they even have their own vets working for them. And very important. I don't want people to get a negative idea about the monks, because they gave, as I mentioned before, they were the biggest employers. They had their own schools. They trained people. They selected the horses. They kept track of everything, of all the names, and not only for the horses, for everything. For what the crops, the sheep, the goat, the bulls. They even had one of the best farms to breed bulls for bullfighting. They were not only known because of the quality of the horses, also for the bulls, for bullfighting.
Of course. Which is such a rich part of the tradition as well.
Yes, it's part of our tradition, of course. And so they started exporting everywhere, selling, of course, and it was very, how would I say that? Very trendy again, that rich people would have horses with the bloodlines all coming from the Carthusian monastery. And of course,
is it fair to say that they were like the Rolls Royce of the time?
Pretty much.
Okay.
In the area, pretty much. Yes, of course. Okay. And they branded everything with a copyright, with their own brand, and it looks it has like shapes very similar to a bell. It was called, in fact, the brand of the bell. And they branded everything: books, ceramics, bulls, sheep, goats, everything, and of course the horse. So it was like everybody would show off having a horse with a brand, like having a Rolls Royce or having a Rolex. It was pretty much the same.
The brand matters. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even back at those days. Unfortunately, this goes on and on and on. Something we have also some written records about is that they sold some mares and horses in different occasions in history to Lipizza. So to Lipizza. So we could say that Carthusian horse are cousins to the Lipizzanos.
Sure.
Because several times in history, they sold horses to Lipizza, to the farm in Lipizza.
So the stock breed is still the PRE, even if it's in Lipizza and Lipizzanas. How interesting.
This goes on and on and on until the year exactly 1810, because the Napoleon troops invaded Spain in 1802. By the time they get down to first to Seville was 1809 and to Jerez 1810. In 1809, they invaded the city of Seville. The Carthusian monks from Seville pick up some of their stuff, their best horses, everything, and they tried to run away and go to Portugal. In fact, they went into Portugal, and then once they got in, we would say the Spanish embassy in Portugal just stole all the horses. Why? Because there was a law in Spain that all horses available would go to the army.
Right.
So they lost their horses. And the ones in here, they said, we don't want that to happen. Of course not. It's not. It wouldn't be fair. We've been breeding for over 300 years. So we don't want to lose all what we did along history. So what the best solution they found was that they contacted with two brothers from Arcos de la Frontera, Juan José and Juan Pedro Zapata. Arcos is only about 25 kilometers away from Jerez, going up north, up to the mountains. And they said, okay, we sell you our best horses. Out of it, they had more than 500 heads at the time. We're talking 1810.
That's a lot of horses.
They sold real cheap to these two brothers, approximately 45 heads. pretty much. And they had to move to Cadiz. Cadiz, if some people have been to Spain, Cadiz is like a little island. You cannot take horses to an island, especially when you have to live on a boat donated by the Jesuits for 3 months. So that was the best solution they found. They got some cash and they said, okay, Mr. Zapatas, you keep breeding, but you're not able to use our brand. That's ours. You have to keep and to give to the horses born a new brand of your own. Right. And that's when we have now Hierro del Bocado on the game.
Right.
Because the shape of the brand given by the Zapata brothers, it looked like a brand. Which, when you translate into Spanish, is the brand of the iron bit, El Hierro del Bocado.
And that's where the
H looks like an H. With 1810, these guys, of course, they started breeding, selling, breeding, doing things. The monks came in and out of the monastery a couple of times. They could never recuperate the horses because there was a law in Spain, exactly 1835, that all the properties from the nobility in the church would go to the government just for the heck of it. So they lost the property of the monastery and everything. Ever since, they never owned the monastery anymore. Wow. So the Zapatas kept breeding. And back in those days, 1800, beginning of the 1900s, women would not inherit the title or money of the family. They would just get married. And that was it. So the grandson of these Zapata brothers, the grandson had 3 children, 2 girls and a son. The girls were quite okay, but the son seems to be, he was not very good with business.
Right.
To make it light. So he started wasting the fortune of the family. So they had to sell first the horses. Now we get another gentleman on the game whose name was Vicente Romero. We're talking now exactly 1852. So the Zapata family, owned the horses since 1810 till 1852. So that was quite a few years. Over 40 years. This guy in 1852 bought the horses. And years later, as the Zapata family went bankrupt, he ended up also buying the brand. But of course, he had the horses for 5-6 years. And then they tried to play the same game as the monks did. Okay, deal. Right. We sell you the horses, but you have to give him your own brand. And that's when we have the C on top of the game.
Right, that little C that you see right on top.
This is what we have. This is our brand. It's like an H with a C.
Yes.
And we have that comes in the game in 1852.
Right. Right.
We don't know if it's C from caballo, from horse, cartujano. We don't know exactly.
But the C had to stay. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And this guy did a really, really nice job. He really did. He was the one. He started making the horses famous. We're talking 1800s. He started presenting horses to competition, to really, really care about features, character, inheritance, all that. This guy was, even though he was married, he never had children. And funny enough, he died at the age of 91, which was not normal. We're talking late 1800s. He died in 1910. Beginning of the 1900s, when life expectancy for humans was
45, 50, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Well, he died at the age of 91, and I have my own theory. He did sports on a daily basis. He was riding on a daily basis.
So he was super fit.
He was super fit. There are pictures, they're all pictures of him.
Somebody said he didn't have children. That also makes sense.
It's true. It's true. He was this
too busy breeding horses. I get it.
They have children.
Thanks, Selena.
Huge guy, big guy, strong. And there are pictures about him being very, very old, still riding, even a few months before he died. So I thought that was amazing, considering the mentality of those days. That we always have to have in mind. So before he died, he divided all the farm and the horses in 4 big lots. And one of them was to his brother-in-law. He started mixing with English thoroughbreds. Another one was sold to South America, to Mexico, in fact. Another one was sent to Extremadura, which is a bit further north from Andalusia. And the smallest part, plus the brands and the best ones, they were kept by his niece, Rosario Romero.
Right.
We're talking, 1810. And she kept breathing, but her children and grandchildren started selling. So since the 1920s, something like that, a lot of different stallions were sold, mares, to different hands. Fortunately, always to very, famous breeders, people who really took care of the Andalusian breed and the Andalusian horse, trying to maintain the bloodlines, the features, and specifically the character of this magnificent horse.
Sure.
And finally, in 1945 and 1947, guys, don't worry, we're getting into it. 1945 and 1947, a family from Puerto de Santa Maria, which is approximately only 10, 15 kilometers away from Jerez, right on the coast, they bought the right of usage of the H with the C and without the C. And ever since 1947, all the horses from Hierro del Bocado have been branded with the H with the C.
Right, because they were both the bloodlines came back together, essentially.
Everything came like in together. This family, they really were keen on horses. They, Spain at that time had a complicated kind of a social and political situation. We had a dictatorship. It was Franco here. And they made it up to make horses again famous. And the image of the Andalusian horse was in the hands of the Terry family. They did a wonderful marketing campaign worldwide. There are pictures of, for example, Dean Martin riding horses of Hierro del Bocado, Jacqueline Kennedy, Bo Derek, of course, Spanish important people like the Duques of Alba, lots of people.
The Horse of Kings, everybody wanted to be on it.
Yeah, it was a wonderful marketing campaign. You have to, think about Spain was in a dictatorship. We were way behind of the rest of the world, socially speaking. And that was the best way to do it. So we would be in every magazine, in every, in commercials. In fact, there was a commercial first issued at the very end of the dictatorship in 1971 already, of a blonde lady riding a white horse, one of our Andalusians, of our Cartujanos, with, with no saddle and no pants.
Oh, wow.
That was an absolute scandal.
They're pushing the limits there in those days.
They really were pushing the limits on those days. It's some kind of a Lady Godiva kind of stuff.
So let me ask you, Patricia, you have some pretty big shoes to fill as a marketing director from those kind of campaigns.
I know. I cannot compete with that. Definitely not. Definitely not. In fact, I remember my father saying, kids, please shut up. There's the Terry commercial on TV.
It was that famous.
It was very famous. And we are, most of us are kind of a dark hair, and this lady was absolutely gorgeous. She had like this super long hair, very suggesting just riding this horse on the beach with no pants, no saddle. And at the time, we had a very chauvinistic kind of society. So it was an absolute scandal.
But it was incredible marketing. It was incredible marketing.
And they were different versions of that same commercial. And, and right now commercials are on TV, 2 weeks at the most? Back in those days, they were for months and months, and they changed it. So it was even better. They were always on TV.
Branding superstar for these wonderful horses. Not only do they look gorgeous, and I presume the horse also had really long hair. So
yes, and it was filmed with 3 different horses in 2 different beaches, and it's a very nice history. In fact, the lady, she was from Austria, and married in Spain and stayed in Spain until she died. She really liked it. And she was a very nice rider. Margaret was her name.
So that brings me to a really interesting conversation now. So the marketing campaign has grown. The world knows about the Andalusian horse. I grew up admiring these horses, right? And of course at CCAB, I was pinching myself just to think I'm standing next to so many. The whole world, and we have quite a few followers who are really interested in the breed and its bloodlines and what to look for in a great Spanish horse. So maybe I thought we could segue and speak to Mariano and both of you can tell us a little bit more about what do you look for in a great Spanish horse, particularly Cartujano, coming from this history, this culture, and this great marketing as well. Can you demystify that?
Well,
sure, Mariano.
The marketing was perfect, of course, because 50 or 40, 50 years later, we continue speaking about that commercial, about the history of the beach and the horse. But of course, they do really, really well as a breeders, because a commercial marketing company or a company area could stay for 1 year or 2 years, but not for 40, 50 years if you don't have a really good product, if you don't have a really good horse. And for me, beauty part, but of course, everybody really can see the beauty of that the horses. And beauty, depending, everyone has a model of beauty, but by sure, the Spanish horse, and especially the Cartusian bloodline horse, they have a very special sensibility and a very special class. So they are horses that really connect with the heart of the persons. So when you connect with the Cartusian horse, you fall in love forever and ever. If you don't connect, well, forget it about. It's like.
So
like
did they breed for that characteristic? They looked to breed for a horse that was really looking to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of examples on the stud, and if you speak with people owning Cartusian horses for the last years, and always is the same story. I have another horse. I have best horses. I have best moving horses. I have bigger horses. But I will never change my Cartusian horse for another horse, even for a better horse, because I had something special with that horse. And in my stables, there were 15 horses or 5 horses or 20 horses, but the Cartusian horse was special for something and was my horse. And I will never change that horse because it was special for me. And that's the point. I think it's the main point of, in general, of Spanish of PRE horses, but especially for Cartusian horses. And it's something that you can measure. You can take a picture to see that. You can make a meter or have a machine to make that. It's just a connection with the owners. And this is the most important, that sensibility and that special character that the horses have.
So when we talk about the character, I mean, that's something when you interact with the horse and you kind of engage with the animal, he gives you back with more. And, I work with some PREs and I can see when they have a really big heart. And if you trace the bloodlines down, for sure, somebody said, there's Cartujano right there, there's Cartujano right there. And you see it quite a lot. Now,
yes.
My question would be that I'm at an equestrian center. Somebody says that is a PRE. My next question is, how do I know he's a Cartujano?
Well, it's a bit difficult to difference a PRE from a Cartusian. Why? Because most of the PREs has a bit of Cartusian blood. Some ones, there are 100%, like we have in the stool, 100% Cartusian, but there are 90% Cartusian and there are 10% Cartusian. So it's impossible to differentiate a 90% is Cartusian Spanish horse with 100% Cartusians, because this is more than very, very soft difference. But between 60-70%, 100% is the color of the silky of the mane, the silky of the hair, the color, that's the sensibility, the heart. The Cartusian or the high percent Cartusian Spanish horses has a big heart for walking. They give you 200%, and if you are trying to compete or trying to do whatever, they always give up to the maximum to be happy with the rider. And that's probably one of the most different. Lots of times you see another breeds or another horses in competition or wherever, and you can see in the training arena with a lot of high quality, and then when you see competing in the main arena, they don't show what they had in the training arena, because they know in the competing arena they are different, they are Jew, and the rider can give all the things, but that never happens with a Cartusian horse. If the Cartusian horse give 100% in the training arena, you can be sure that in the competing arena, they will give to you 110%, no less. And it's a big difference. And that's why I think there is that connection with the rider, because they know that they are riding a really loyal mate, compañero, mate to compete or to do whatever, maybe a competition, in a FEI competition, but maybe working with friends at the field, a Sunday afternoon like today, and that's very important.
So I mean,
they're very artsy as well. It's funny because they know when they are performing.
Sure. Definitely,
when they have people around, they're very artistic. You might see like very relaxed, and then they notice the music. They know they're very artistic.
And I've seen that
very much.
That artistic nature, with the movement and the way their mane moves, it's so beautiful. And we have someone asking a question. Caroline here is asking a question that with the modern movement towards dressage changing, more sport horse and extensive movements, etc. Her question is, have you changed the breeding characteristics of the modern riding? Mariano, what are your thoughts on that?
We are trying not to change, but we have to go with the times. We can keep in the horse that was popular, was demanded by people in 1950, because that was a smaller horse. That was a horse for different purpose than today. And of course, we have to have the focus that today the owners want a horse to ride, want a horse to make, maybe not a professional competition, but maybe a social or a competition in the area, in small competition. And we have to keep in mind that we don't have a horse to put in the stable and take pictures. Not only for that. For that,
to be functional.
We have the best horses, but we also have a horse to enjoy out of the box, not only in the box. Maybe in the past, there was another objective, another purpose by horses, at least in Spain. That was just to have a walk around and sit. And now we are trying to reach that bit of sport horse. Of course, we can't and we won't compete with Hannoveraner or Holsteiner or Westphalian horses, because
it's not our task either.
You're not looking to compete. And you have to find that balance as a breeder. You have to find that balance between the heritage of the horse and also the modern need. And it's not an easy job, no doubt. But Mariano, that I wanted to ask you, you must have an enormous amount of pressure on you to keep the heritage. Pressure and stress to keep the heritage and yet make it.
Don't remember me, please. I know. Well, of course, but this is very, very difficult, very important for me. But also, it's a lot beautiful to be able to keep with that things, no. And of course, we have to keep an eye in the heritage and of the history, but also look forward to the future to be able to get a nice horse, a good horse for people, because I repeat you, we don't want a horse to take pictures. We don't need that. We don't want that. We want keep that, but improving and trying to reach as much as possible as a sport horse. Well, sport intending a sport, no an Olympic Games horse. In Olympic Games, there are 20 horses all around the world. Yes. Most of the sport horses are for normal people who like to compete in a medium low level around the house for a weekend and enjoy a good weekend. That's why that's our focus. And if with that focus we get an Olympic game horse, perfect. But we know that's really difficult to get the highest sport horse, and mainly with a closed book like it's PRE, and even more with a small part of that closed book that is Cartusian lineage. So we just want, trying to give an answer to Caroline, we try to don't lose 500 of history, but trying to focus in a more functional or more modern horse. But of course, keep an eye or keep in mind that we have to keep 500 of history, of course.
Of course, and it's interesting because you know, earlier on a dressage panel we had Rafael Soto, and of course, you know, Invasor is one of the best ambassadors of the PRE, and I'm sure that he had a lot of Cartusian in him one way or another, just given the prestige of the horse. And then you fast forward today, and comparatively, you know, some of the Olympic horses, you see a lot of Lusitanos coming forward. You know, we've got Ecuador, who's you know, made so much progress. He's now under Carl Hester's training, and I find that the Lusitanos many of them are moving more and more like the warm bloods. And yet you had horses like Invasor and Fuego, so Juan Manuel Munoz. It must be very tempting for you to start to have these horses in these competitive environments, and yet still maintain the art and the heritage and the story.
If you see the Fuego, for example, Fuego, if you see the bloodlines, more or less around 50-60% of Fuego are Cartusian bloodlines. The
Wow.
mother of Fuego is nearly 100% Cartusian. So that's why Fuego was so expressive horse, by sure, because the father was a very powerful line in Spanish horses, but the mother of Fuego was mainly Cartusian and was the perfect cross, with powerful from the father and expression and class and expression and heart from the mother. And that was probably, there is a big competition between Fuego and Invasor, but maybe Fuego was checking the result, but sure was the best Spanish horse ever in competition and was 50-60% Cartusian bloodlines. And I remember, and I think everybody that love dressage have seen the cure in Kentucky World Equestrian Games. Was amazing how people start to clap the hands and stars on the seats, because it was really amazing that cure from Fuego in Kentucky.
I was going to say,
he might not have been the most technical one, but he was again the more artist. And people were applauding and standing up, which no one else got.
No one else. And he was competing against Tortillas. Tortillas might have been the greatest ever dressage horse. One black, one white. It was beautiful. And again, I've never seen anyone clap like that. But when you talk to people about that performance from Juan Manuel, they still say that, you know, they have chills up their spine when they see this Spanish horse do what he did. And I was lucky enough to have dinner with Juan Manuel Munoz. And I asked him, I said, what was Fuego like? And I know the audience wants to hear that a little bit as well. And he said, he wasn't a great horse technically, but he had so much heart and he knew he was competing. Exactly what you said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a couple of horses that you see, it's like, well, we'll see how it goes. And then they perform or they go out on the show and they have such a big heart like this. Mm-hmm. And they give out everything because they know they are performing. Mm-hmm. And then once they go back to the start, they're like devastated. They're awful tired. But that's the way this type of horse is.
By sure,
on the breeding, on the history.
By sure, in that cure in Kentucky, Fuego was fifth in the final result. But by sure, if you have give the result because of the level of the sound of the clap of the audience, probably will be first or second.
By sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen a crowd go that wild in any dressage test, hands down. So
and maybe it's a topic for you for the future. Why wild horses that people love or people want to see or like to see are not the best in the final result? Why the technique is always over the transmission or because at the end
of the emotion.
Technique is important, of course, because it's a competition. But in a not objective and subjective sport like dressage, why don't that not technical or not that subjective part of the sport don't have more powerful in the note? Because lots of people happen that the winner not always is the horse that people likes all around the winner was very good, was perfect, but my preferred horse was the third or the fourth or the second or the fifth. That happens lots of time in competition. So maybe it's a topic for you for the future. What happens in dressage? Why technique is always over the subjective, over the transmission.
I think it's a great topic, and we touched on it on the dressage forum, but it is definitely a future topic, because horses that give you that emotion, that charisma. I know the Arabian horses are bred to give you that charisma in a different way, and I'm sure many people want to see that. We may see an emergence of a different kind of dressage that captures more of the emotion. I think we are coming to an end to this call. And there's two things that I'd love to leave the audience with. The first is that the Andalusian horse is one of the most iconic breeds of horses. And the Cartusian horse is the most iconic of all Andalusian horses. And this place is the most iconic of all places I've ever seen. And so they're proud hosts on Cavago. You have to go there. You have to go there. It's a place that I promised Patricia I'm going to come every year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I would have been there right now.
I know.
Right now, I would have been sitting next to you.
We're waiting for you.
Absolutely. I would have been sitting right next to you. So with that, what we'll do is we'll take a moment. One last word from Patricia, one last word from Mariano before we end this call. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to Patricia and Mariano. What last words would you like to say to our guests?
Well, I would say thank you again for being here, listening to us, because it's very important for us to let everybody know about the history and the features to maintain it. I mean, like, that's why it's government owned, otherwise it would have gotten lost.
Absolutely.
And this whole lineage, this whole family of the Carthusian horse. And it's very important for us. It's part of a task as a public company. And let me tell you something that I didn't mention before. We own right now, we have the property of the original brand of the Carthusian monks, which we bought in the year 2002 because the monks definitely left for the last time the monastery. We bought it for a very, very cheap price, but this price had a very important condition. The property of the farm always has to be in public hands. Wow. Never in private hands, always in public hands. And that's our duty and our task, to maintain, of course, the Andalusian horse and let everybody know about it and spread the history. So that's why it's important for us to be in places like Cavago, so everybody
knows about it.
Have an idea of who we are.
It's a national heritage. It's a national heritage. Mariano, what would you like to say?
It's a simple message. If you can, don't lose the opportunity to ride a Cartusian horse, please.
I'll definitely be riding one soon.
Yeah, perfect experience for you.
Right. And with that, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Pastor. Hope to see
Absolutely.
you soon.
And I end all my calls. Patricia knows this. May the horse be with you. And in this case, the Cartusian horse be with you. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great evening.